is 9:31. We'll call this meeting to order. I'm just having a little difficulty as the computer isn't accepting my password yet, but we're going to figure it out here. It was not changed password time, so we'll figure it out. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge that we meet on the traditional land of Treaty 6 territory in the Métis homeland, and acknowledge the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Nakota, Iska, as well as Métis and Inuit, and now settlers from around the world. I will start with a roll call. Councillor Tang?
Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Elliott?
Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning. Councillor Parmar?
Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Salvador's here.
Good morning.
Good morning. Also in the room is Councillor Stevenson.
Good morning.
Good morning. And since I can't get online just yet, do we have any other councillors online?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Councillor Rutherford.
Thank you, Councillor Rutherford.
And good morning from Councillor Wright.
Councillor Wright is there as well. Fantastic. All right. Let's go here. So before we consider today's agenda, I'll ask all members present if they have any pecuniary or conflicts of interest to declare regarding any of the items to be discussed. Pecuniary interest exists when an item can monetarily affect a member of council, their employer, or family member, and a conflict of interest exists when an item could affect a private interest of a member of council, their employer, or family member. Do any members of council have a pecuniary or conflict of interest to declare? Hearing no declared pecuniary or conflicts of interest, we'll move to the adoption of the agenda. Councillor Tang?
Yes. Can you, I'll move that the August 12th, 2026 Executive Committee meeting agenda be adopted.
Thank you. And please, any questions on that agenda? Please vote. I'm a yes.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Parmar is a yes.
Thank you, Councillor Parmar.
I'm a yes.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. We have all the votes.
Thank you. Please display the vote. That is carried 5-0. Next is the approval of the minutes. Councillor Salvador.
Yeah, I'll move the approval of the minutes from the June 30th, 2026 Executive Committee meeting.
Thank you. Any questions, errors, or omissions on that? Seeing none, please vote, and I'm a yes.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Parmar is a yes.
Thank you, Councillor Parmar. We have all the votes.
Thank you. Please display the vote. That is carried 5-0. Next, council protocol items. I don't believe we have any. I don't recall any. So then, therefore, we'll move on to selection of items for debate. And I'll look to the board to see if anyone has any items they wish to select. Councillor Salvador?
7-1 and 7-2, please.
7-1 and 7-2. Fantastic. I don't see anyone else on the board, so I'll take a motion to approve all remaining items.
So
moved by Councillor Salvador. That would be moving 5-1, the revised due date, and 7-3. Please vote on those remaining items. I'm a yes.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm a yes.
Thank you, Councillor Parmar. We have all the votes.
Thank you. Please display the vote. That is carried 5-0.
Thank you, Mayor. This morning, Executive Committee has approved the recommendations in the following reports without debate. Item 5.1, Urban Reserve in Blatchford, with a revised due date of November 18th, 2026. And item 7.3, 2025 alley lighting maintenance tax excess revenue, which will be proceeding to Council.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. So next is request to speak. There are two. I'm going to double check. So one of them is a board member of one of the agencies that would be presenting. Is David Plamondon here, or is David online?
Yeah, I'm here, Mayor. I'm online.
Okay, and were you looking to do a separate presentation, or are you looking just to be able to answer questions if members of council have any?
I just wanted to share a few comments on behalf of the BIA. I think it's separate than the questions that Eric will be answering on behalf of our board.
Okay, no, I just wanted to get a sense of what folks are here for. So, and then as Sandy's here on behalf of the CTC. So I will take a motion to hear from those speakers. Councillor Salvador? Or Councillor Tang?
Yeah, I can move that executive committee hear from the following speakers in panels when appropriate. 7.1, 2025 Business Improvement Area Annual Reports and Audited Financial Statements from David Plamondon, Alberta Avenue Business Association, and Stanley Pond, Chinatown Transformation Collaborative Society.
Thank you very much. Please vote to hear from those speakers.
I'm a yes.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer.
And I'm a yes as well.
Thank you, Mayor Knack. We have all the votes.
Thank you. Please display the vote. That is carried 5-0. And from their requests for time specific, there are none. We'll just go at them in order. Well, I guess we already had 7.1 as first item of business, and then 7.2. So wonderful. So now we're going to go on to item, and of course 5.1 was already moved into that, into the revised due date. So let us start with item 7.1, and I'll go to administration and our delegation.
Thank you. Good morning, committee members and members of council. My name is Tom Mansfield, and I'm Director of Local Economy in the Economic Development Branch. Joining me today is Todd Janes, Chair of the Edmonton BIA Council and Executive Director of the Stony Plain Road and Area Business Association, who will be presenting on behalf of the BIA Council. Joining him are many of the executive directors from the 12 other BIA associations, both here in the room and virtually. City Council has made economic development a key priority, as evidenced by the approval of Edmonton Advantage, Edmonton's Economic Development Strategy 2026-30. This strategy is built on 3 foundational pillars: enabling a strong business environment, marketing the Edmonton Advantage, and driving investment. Business Improvement Areas Associations, or BIAs, are one of the city's economic development partners, representing nearly 5,000 Edmonton businesses across 13 defined geographic areas. BIAs enable their business members to collaborate to improve, promote, and advocate for their commercial district. These self-funded, member-governed organizations focus on enhancing the vibrancy and appeal of their neighborhoods to patrons and businesses alike. Their efforts in public realm improvements and business support contribute to shaping areas that are desirable to both Edmontonians and visitors, while contributing to the local economy. BIA investment continues to grow. In 2026, member businesses are investing a total of $5.1 million in member-funded BIA operations, which is a $200,000 increase from 2025. BIAs serve as a voice for local businesses, utilizing direct knowledge of district needs and customer trends to drive impact. The partnership between the City of Edmonton and BIAs directly supports the Edmonton Advantage pillars in practical ways, day in and day out. For the Enabling a Strong Business Environment pillar, this is the foundational strength of BIAs. Their focus on enhanced services, including pathfinding and connection to resources, maintenance, beautification, safety, and security efforts, creates a welcoming environment essential for business retention and resilience. For the Marketing the Edmonton Advantage pillar, through local campaigns, placemaking initiatives, and events, BIAs contribute to the city's reputation. Programs like decorative tree lighting and street-level beautification initiatives enhance the appeal of commercial areas, along with seasonal events, directly increasing the visitor friendliness of several commercial areas spread across dozens of neighborhoods. And finally, for the Driving Investment pillar, BIAs actively contribute to making their districts investment ready by undertaking business attraction and retention activities, advocating for infrastructure improvements, making local improvements with the help of the Enhanced Services Grant, and helping members leverage funding sources like the city's Storefront Improvement Program to enhance commercial properties and attract and retain businesses. These examples demonstrate that our mutually beneficial partnership is driving local investment. The city remains committed to supporting BIAs because their success and our city's vibrancy are linked. Together, we ensure our commercial districts are investment ready every day. Before I turn the presentation over to the BIAs, I will focus briefly on the 13 BIA annual reports and audited financial statements. Administration has reviewed all documents to ensure conformance with applicable provincial and municipal requirements for the ongoing operation of BIAs in Edmonton. While administration has confirmed that all submitted documents from the 13 BIAs meet the minimum provincial legislative requirements, the Chinatown BIA continues to experience unique financial management considerations. All other BIAs are in compliance with their respective bylaws. The auditor for the Chinatown BIA has issued a disclaimer of opinion on the 2025 Chinatown BIA financial statements due to issues lingering from the 2024 audit, which also had a disclaimer of opinion. A disclaimer of opinion means the auditor was not able to express an opinion on Chinatown and Area Business Association financial statements due to limitations in obtaining sufficient appropriate audit evidence. To date, through 2026, the organization has developed and begun implementing a number of actions to address the auditor's concerns, including increasing the number of signing authorities, a new mechanism for tracking financial transactions, improved review processes, and a more robust tracking and reconciliation of gift cards. On August 7th, administration received a letter written by the auditors of the Chinatown BIA, Nguyen Scott LLP. We understand that this letter may have been shared with members of City Council. This letter provides further clarity on the reasons for their findings and indicates that the issue in question is being appropriately addressed. Administration will continue to monitor the situation and provide Council with updates as appropriate. Should further action be desired, Council has the ability under the bylaw to request any other statements and reports required by Council. However, in Q4 of this year, the BIA budgets will be presented to City Council for approval. Those are the 2027 budgets. As outlined in the report, there are potential options that could be considered at that time regarding the approval of the Chinatown BIA's 2027 budget, including linking approval of future budgets to a clean 2026 audit. Given the actions underway, administration is optimistic that the proper financial controls are being put into place that should result in an unqualified 2026 audit to be presented next year. The Chinatown BIA Treasurer, Jackson Ho, I believe is here with us today in person or online and is available to answer questions. In closing, the success of the Edmonton Advantage strategy will reflect the strength of our BIAs. Their growing investment in their districts and their on-the-ground work ensure that our main streets are resilient, investment-ready, and vibrant every day. We deeply appreciate the continuous investment from BIA business members, the time dedicated by their volunteer board members, and the leadership of their executive directors. They are important partners in collaboratively building a more prosperous, resilient, and inclusive Edmonton for us all. Thank you, and I will now turn it over to BIA Council. Todd, over to you.
Good morning, Your Worship and esteemed councillors. As Tom mentioned, this is going to be a bit of a repeat, but my name is Todd James, and I am the Executive Director of the Stony Plain Road BIA, and I have the honor of being the current Chair of Edmonton's BIA Council. The reports to Executive Committee of City Council are a little bit later this year, and it is interesting to reflect back on the reports created by Edmonton's 13 BIAs and the work they accomplished in 2025. I want to start off by stating that through the collaborative work of our BIAs, we have supported 4,600 businesses to remain open during construction, social disorder, and a turbulent supply chain through threatening tariffs and the flow of goods. We work hard to help make owning and investing in our local communities easier with the work of the BIAs. I'm going to take a bit of a different approach, as some within Council may have an impression that we are business lobbyists. We are actually community developers and place managers. BIAs are often an organized investment from communities and businesses to support greater vibrancy and vitality in economically depressed or fragile communities. Most business improvement areas throughout North America were established because the local community was facing obstacles and economic hardships. And through collective action, businesses were able to cooperate, to work together, to protect and build a better area for their businesses and their surrounding neighborhoods. We are a trusted partner with the city in placemaking, tourism, and localized economic development. BIAs are connected, touching on over 27 of the 163 community leagues within Edmonton, and how neighborhood renewal and economic development are interlinked. This strong connection also highlights the integral role BIAs play in supporting city growth and the need for enhanced density and renewal plans while strengthening the economic vitality of the communities we serve. I also want to focus on the past year and what we achieved in 2025. I'm also speaking to Council responding to our requests and concerns regarding social disorder. This remains a considerable obstacle to economic stability and city vibrancy. And I will emphasize how important the Enhanced Services Grant is in combating these real issues. I want to thank Council for their direction and support in establishing this grant for BIAs. Many of the BIAs are problem solvers and respond to their local communities through the Enhanced Service Grant. BIAs have positioned community approaches to combating the effects of social disorder with on-call teams, outreach navigators, in specialized cleaning, and new approaches to security. With innovative crime prevention through environmental design via placemaking and lighting, and to late-term changes from Council, we were able to respond to budget deficiencies, to respond to other things including broken windows and support for businesses. This grant program has had considerable positive effect in its first 18 months. It is interesting to note that when I asked my colleagues in the BIAs, much of the enhanced services grants were to support our local collective communities and to support safety and vibrancy, and not only to businesses, but to the larger community. I also want to acknowledge how enhanced police presence supports economic outlooks and how the new approaches to police resource deployment are targeting hotspots. Social disorder needs a multifaceted approach. I'm sure Council is very aware of this. And we think some of the new developments that are being rolled out in Chinatown have great promise for interprovincial collaboration. I want to express gratitude to this Council for refocusing on economic development with a more acute lens on local development, infrastructure renewal, and maintenance. And the importance of infrastructure and back alleyways, especially to our priority growth areas, to be competitive and to be laser focused upon economic development in the international marketplace. With our innovation, our values, it is all deeply important so that we are able to support entrepreneurs at the local level. Finally, I was thinking that there are a lot of things that the BIAs need in terms of local economic development that perhaps at this time the city cannot do, or maybe shouldn't do. Aspects of local economic development, microtourism, and placemaking could be more effectively done in partnership with a new local economic development entity. I want to thank you for listening, and I welcome questions from Council to myself or my fellow BIA executive directors in the room and online. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and appreciate the presentations. Before we go into questions of our delegation, we will go to the two speakers that have registered to speak. The first is David Plamondon, and then next will be Sandy Pond. And just as a quick reminder, although everyone here has been here before, I still like to just do it in case folks watching online are new. So what happens is, of course, for each item, administration has provided a presentation, and then members of the public approved to speak will be invited to make their presentations. Speakers will be heard in panels, and each speaker will have 5 minutes to present. The clerk will run the official timer in the meeting room, and it will be displayed in the virtual meeting. The light will be green for the first 4 minutes, turn yellow when there's 1 minute remaining, and flash red when the 5 minutes are up. And when everyone in your panel has had a chance to present, members of council may ask questions of you or other panel members. And for this reason, we ask that you remain in the meeting until all questions have been asked of your panel, if you're able to stay. And for those participating virtually, please make sure you mute your microphone when you're not speaking. And if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please reach out to the Office of City Clerk using the contact information provided in your confirmation of registration or at city.clerk@edmonton.ca. And for those in person, we can have city staff guide you to your seat. You'll also, when we get to questions of the delegation, folks can come up to the microphone just to my right, most of your lefts, when you have that. And then the final piece is just before we go into our speakers, I want to remind everyone of the respectful behavior expectations required while participating in this meeting, both in person and virtually. Hearing from the public is an important part of Council's process that provides us with the opportunity to hear the full diversity of opinions that exists in our community. As meeting chair, my role is not to moderate the nature of the content being discussed, but to ensure behavior support a safe, respectful, and neutral space for my colleagues, city employees, and the public. Disrespectful comments, including the use of profane language or gestures, and behaviors such as shouting, cheering, or clapping, will not be tolerated, as well as the use of any raise hand feature, chat, emoticon response, or AI note-taking tools in the virtual meeting are not permitted. And I will direct the clerk to have security remove anyone violating these expectations, and they will not be permitted to rejoin the meeting. I will not provide any additional warnings. The meeting is being live streamed, and everyone is welcome to watch online. So with that in mind, let's go to our speakers. We'll start with David. Please go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mayor Mack, and thank you to the council for allowing me some time to speak. I just had 3 quick items I wanted to speak on in support of our BIA council and our BIA presentations. I'd like to start with just taking a moment to acknowledge the recent death of Sonny Randawa, who I know we all know was a store owner in Cromdale who was murdered last week during a robbery attempt, as well as Hung Trang and Ban Phuc Huang, apologize if my pronunciation is wrong, who were killed in 2022 in Edmonton's Chinatown. I think these murders highlight the ongoing problem that we have, and I know it's not a unique problem to Edmonton or even Alberta. And I'm certainly not suggesting that business owners should be in a priority in terms of safety, but I think it does highlight that the role we play is oftentimes at the center of communities that are more subject to vulnerable populations, more subject to potential crime and violence. And it really highlights the need for a focus on community safety that's multi-government, multi-agency. I know the city of Edmonton, especially in social media, gets targeted as being the primary driver of solving these problems, and I recognize that it is a complex problem that requires all level of government. And I'd really like to just highlight Councillor Rutherford's focus, bringing it back to the community safety and well-being framework in the meeting on August 10th. So thank you, Councillor Rutherford, for centering and prioritizing community safety as a priority. It is, again, one of the biggest topics that we talk about as BIAs and business owners is how we can improve the safety, not just of ourselves, not just of our businesses, but the communities in which we serve. I'd also just like to thank the council for the letter that was sent on February 11th to Minister Williams, recommending that the municipalities be given the flexibility to determine whether business owners or property owners are the liable party for the BIA tax. Another challenge that we constantly speak about, I know that Councillor Stevenson, or not Councillor Stevenson, sorry, that many of the councillors are working on addressing problem properties as well as abandoned properties. I know that the decision from the government of Alberta didn't go the way we wanted to, despite their constant promises of red tape reduction. I would maybe like to encourage the council to consider examining how commercial properties are licensed. Most commercial properties are, in fact, operating as businesses. They are generating revenue for the owners. And so I think it would be an option for the city to consider considering those empty properties, those empty commercial properties as pending businesses and taxing them as BIA levy paying members as well. It would kind of skirt the rules that the GOA has implemented, but I think it would be well within the rights of the city of Edmonton to recognize those as potential businesses. And lastly, just echoing kind of what Todd had suggested, I do think the city is doing a lot of great work in helping support the BIAs improve and deliver the services that our communities are benefiting from. But I would like to encourage the administration to consider the timing in which grants and service agreements are provided. As BIAs, we're asked to develop our budget for the year and have those submitted before the end of the fiscal year, so that for the next fiscal year. But oftentimes we don't get our grant approvals or even disbursements until well into the fiscal year. It makes it very difficult for us to plan accordingly on how much budget we can have. So our conversations are typically focused on here is how much we know our levies are going to be. Here is the only amount we can plan for. And then if we're approved for grant, we typically don't find out until February, which means then we have to retroactively adjust our budgets, and it really limits our ability to provide meaningful services to the communities that we service and the businesses that we service as well. So that's really all I had to say. I really, again, appreciate the work that the council does to help support and uplift the communities that our BIA is serving. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And next up is Sandy Pond. Sandy, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor, and the other BIA members. Can you hear me properly?
Absolutely. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm here to support the Chinatown BIA, and on behalf of the CTC, the Chinatown Transformation Collaborative, we are in here to support the Chinatown BIA. Our CTC mandates to make Chinatown destination with economic development, but this needs safety and security for de-risking for small to large investment. And CTC have had the most effective year of collaboration ever. And we thank and we commend the effort of this board and its executives of the Chinatown BIA. We understand the new board came to being in 2025. Just like the CTC, this board is not just about governance. They're very operational. They're all volunteers like us, but they do have one employee. Unfortunately, he left before all the financial and program events were accounted for. We do work daily and on regular basis with these Chinatown BIA board because of the issues that they have to deal with daily. And because we work so closely, we do see the effort and the tremendous work that they have done. And I have to say, the new chair who's the acting ED right now will be finding a new employee. They have discussed it with us, but the executive committee have stepped up like nobody have done, not in my experience of 4 decades of not-for-profit organizations. This board has done so much and put in so much time and effort. And I know the trajectory of Chinatown is going to a positive direction. And we need the Chinatown BIA to continue with us and in that for positive momentum. We observe daily from businesses, from other not-for-profit organizations, and they have nothing but compliments for this BIA board. So again, I'm here to support the Chinatown BIA and its member on behalf of CTC. And also, based on our experience with our food tour with the merchants, they're absolutely satisfied with this current board. And I hope that the effort will continue and that, as suggested, that they that the city council and its administration continue to work with the Chinatown BIA and assist them with the audits and financial statements. And I know that everything will be positive going forward. So thank you for giving me the time to express our gratitude.
Thank you very much. Any questions for our speakers? Noting that, of course, we'll have questions of the delegation, which includes representation from all of the various BIAs. I'm not seeing any questions for these two speakers, so thank you very much. Oh, sorry, that's incorrect. Councillor Tang has questions. Please go ahead, Councillor Tang.
Yeah, great, thank you. Maybe questions for David. I just want to clarify kind of the various points you raised, because I think each one had the ask that wasn't raised earlier in the BIA Council Chair's presentation necessarily. So I just wanted to reiterate, number one, on crime and violence. What is your ask there? And I think I also heard tax levy the vacant property owners and treat them as pending business owners. And then the third piece was about the timing of the grants.
That's
So
correct,
just-
Ken. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
go
so
ahead.
on the first piece, Councillor Tang, there wasn't really a specific ask. Mostly just acknowledging that I recognize how complicated safety is and that it isn't, mostly just acknowledging that the city can't solve those problems specifically. And I just want to offer my support to the city council that I know you're in a tough position because there is some tools that the city has to reduce it. But as we know, most of the drivers of crime are economic based and based on social inequality, which the city can't entirely address. It has to be a partnership between the provincial and federal governments. So mostly just commiseration that I recognize that you get dealt an unfair hand when it comes to the responsibility the city council has for dealing with those problems, but also recognizing that many of the councillors are doing their work through the community safety and well-being framework, and that is still part of the conversation. To confirm, the second piece was exactly right. Maybe examining how vacant businesses, commercial properties in particular, can be recognized as potential businesses because, again, commercial rent is a particular strong revenue driver for many people who own those commercial properties. And so whether they're being rented at a time or not, they should be recognized and classified as businesses and then also required to pay their BIA levies. The burden shouldn't be put solely on actual operators because those independent owners, those business owners, property owners are generating revenue as a business. And then the third piece was exactly right, just the timing. If the city council could look at adjusting the timing of grants that are being administered, we obviously very much appreciate the financial support and grants that allow us to continue to deliver the services and work that we do. It's just a matter of timing. If the timing aligned a little bit better with our financial planning, it would make our work a lot easier.
Okay, that's very helpful. Just back to your first point, though, you clearly were listening to the discussion from Monday on the community safety and well-being framework. Do you have any recommendations or, it's been referred back. So I guess, here's an opportunity to refine our approach to that. Do you have any thoughts or further feedback around that?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Councillor Tang. Thank you. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, because it's what I frequently circle back to whenever I speak to City Council, I think including the BIAs in more active planning and conversations
Sure.
around safety.
Yeah.
There are numerous examples across North America in which business owners and community members can be actively involved in providing more presence and more sense of safety and security and well-being into the neighborhoods. It is a complicated issue. Again, until we can address the underlying socioeconomic challenges that exist in our society, we're not going to completely eliminate that crime, but having more community members active and aware in their communities, supporting one another, in our own conversations at our BIA, when we use the example of what happened to Sunny Arandawa, we know that even in a perfect world, police response times can't be instantaneous. So if there was a mutual aid network, a mutual support network among businesses and community members where, an extra person or two or three could show up in the event of a shoplifting event or somebody acting erratically, more people tend to help diffuse violent situations. So I think creating a system in which the BIAs are empowered to work with their communities to kind of build that presence and sense of security, I think could go a long way.
Excellent.
And then obviously adding more advocacy and pressure to both provincial and federal governments to do their part to addressing mental health issues, providing better social support for health, providing better support for people who are suffering from economic despair, which again isn't a function of the city, but having those conversations and using the platform that the city has to hold the provincial and federal partners accountable for their part in these problems.
Yeah, great. No, thank you. And I do want to just appreciate you and your BIA colleagues. I think you're certainly a key group that recognizes the nuance of all this complexity. And so thank you for your words.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Parmar.
Thank you very much. Just a question for Speaker Plamondon. Thank you very much for coming. Wondering, is it the grants or is it the levies that is the delay, or is it both?
It's specifically the grants. The levies, we can always, we have a budget specifically planned for the levies. So when we know, the levies are always a fixed amount. So we know exactly how much money we're going to generate on an annual basis based on our levies, because that amount is provided to the executive directors ahead of time. So when we are budget planning, we know we have a fixed amount in our levies, but the grants are always a question mark until they're finally approved and dispersed in February. So we can't plan accordingly to leverage that grant funding until we know the grant funding is there. So we're asked to provide our budgets ahead of the fiscal year, but we don't have a full insight into what our actual cash flow is going to be based on grants until after the fiscal year has started.
Great. And are there any specific grants that you've seen that have been easier to get? Is it the same process for every single grant? Because there are multiple BIA grants.
Yeah, I'd have to defer to the colleagues who serve on the BIA Council, but my understanding is that there is a bit of disparity between the grants that we are available to. We're very lucky to have Eric as our executive director, who's very creative and is very active in getting grants. We actually, again, part of our BIA board meeting for the Alberta Avenue Business Association was looking at comparisons towards projected budgets and actual budgets, and it does seem like our BIA is very active in generating those grants. So I'd have to defer to Todd or Lorraine or Eric or any of the other BIA executive directors to speak specifically about the challenges of the grants, but my understanding is that there is a bit of disparity, and some grants are a little bit more easy for us to apply for and qualify for, and some require a little bit more creative work.
Okay, thanks very much. I will ask administration after. Thanks.
Thank you. Those are all the questions for our two speakers. So now we'll move to questions of our delegation, and we'll go, this is selected by Councillor Salvador. So Councillor Salvador, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was also going to follow up on the questions around timing of grants that were raised by our speaker here. So looking for a little bit more information around, is there flexibility to work a little bit more seamlessly with some of the timing constraints and I guess financial realities that BIAs are facing?
Councillor Salvador, I think this is something we can take away. We definitely want our grant programs to be successful for the BIAs and the communities that they're intended to impact. Part of this is around our own budget as well in terms of the fiscal year. So, and I do understand David is quite right. We do ask for the BIA budgets to be submitted the year before they're effective. And so we can take that away and see if we've got the ability to move to line those up more closely, subject to our own budgetary limitations.
Okay, that's great to hear. And would you need any direction on that, or it sounds like you can take that away on your own?
No, we can take it away. We're already working with BAAs on a couple of other things, and so this is something we can take a closer look at as well.
Great, really happy to hear that. I think that would be, an important move that could just help make things move a little bit smoother on our partners' ends. So with the, I wanted to just do a check-in to see where some of the conversations were at around moving from business owners to property owners for the BIA levy. Where did those conversations end off?
Well, the provincial government did a fairly fulsome consultation with constituencies. And BIAs were primarily aligned with what the city of Edmonton asked for too. There were other people involved. I would say BOMA was the business owners, managers were very set against placing the BIA levy payment to building owners. and the province decided not to change any of that. There were some minor changes in the MGA, but nothing that would have any meaningful impact on this issue. It becomes a big issue for us in BIA, certainly when we're trying to have vibrant main streets and we have unattended or derelict properties. They are magnets for social disorder. They are huge blights in our communities. And certainly in my area, I had a fairly large fire, so that needs to be addressed. And I think it sits squarely with the province. There are some minor things, as Mr. Plamondon suggested. There are businesses that receive money. Their job is to own a building and rent it out for storage or other tenants. So I think that needs to be looked at as well.
Right. Yeah. So that's okay. I appreciate you sharing a little bit about the engagement that did happen and what was shared on your end. I would have hoped for a better outcome there, given our collective advocacy. So coming back to the point that was raised by Speaker Plamondon about treating vacant properties as pending or potential business owners, and that those folks should also be required to pay their BIA levy. Additional thoughts on that?
I think it's important because, as I said earlier, we are place managers. A lot of what we do is to create environments and ecosystems that are attractive to investment, are attractive to tourists, are attractive to Edmontonians. And some of those perceptions of safety and community well-being are impacted by poor lighting, dirty properties, boarded up windows. Those are all indicators that that area is not safe or that those property owners don't care, which also leads to concerns around safety and security. And at a municipal level, I would hope that just as City Council, and I'm preaching to a strong advocate in you, Councillor Salvador, but we've seen significant success in problem residential properties. So why aren't rooming houses or temporary residents also being treated in similar ways, or apartment buildings?
Thank you very much. On committee, I think it's me next. Maybe I'll just chat with any of our representatives from the Chinatown BIA who want to join us. I don't think there's microphones there, are there? Or are there? No? Yeah, I think I'll need to bring you up just over to the front here, just to... Yeah, right at that microphone would be great. Thanks for coming up, and I know there had been a supplemental letter that I think got sent yesterday or the day before with some additional information from the audit. So I think just the main question is, do you have a sense of when you are targeting completion of all the outstanding pieces there? I know there's been changeover in staff, so this is like, I know you're aware of it. I know you're working on it. The supplemental letter said that there's been some additional improvements. What's your target timeline?
So I would say the primary, I guess, notation is regarding a couple of carryover grant projects, namely Light Up Chinatown and Shutter Festival. So basically, the auditor's notation is basically specifying because those projects are not completed, they cannot fully confirm the usage of the funds. So he said once those projects are completed, which is intended to be this year, there really is nothing to look back. Everything is really looking forward.
Okay, so essentially you would expect that everything should be cleaned up by the end of this year. So as we get ready and I'm just double checking with administration, when do we get the reports for the budget approvals?
That'll be coming forward in December.
December, okay. So it is safe to say you're hoping to have that wrapped up around the same time we'd be asked to approve your budget for 2027. Is that generally?
Those two projects, yeah.
Okay,
The
good.
intention is, yes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask that out loud because I do think, and I won't speak for the rest of my colleagues on committee, but I do think that's important before we approve a budget to be able to see a completion of that work. And I know that there's been new people in the roles, so you're very eager to also get that work done, but I just want to say that out loud. And to administration, you don't need direction. I know you gave options, but essentially our next check-in point is December. If for some reason they have not completed their work, you would notify us during that meeting, and then council may or may not choose to approve a budget.
Yes, so today you're not required to give us direction related to budgets. In December, we would be seeking that direction and would come forward with the advice or information at that time.
But part of the information you will provide to us is whether they have completed what has been identified in these pieces here.
Yes.
Okay, good. I think that's important. I think just for transparency and for good governance and for, again, I'm speaking for just myself as one member of council, but I think it would be important that before we approve a budget, I'd want to see completion or as part of that process. So, okay, great. Those were my main questions for the Chinatown BIA folks. So you're all welcome to grab a seat. And I think everything else had been very thoroughly covered in each of the annual reports. Maybe just one to Mr. Janes to say from the BIA Council, I know you mentioned, I think you're representing about 4,600 businesses total, correct? Give or take?
Yes,
Yeah.
give or take.
Yeah.
It's a moment in time.
And that's what I was just going to check is how often are you getting numbers about, I'm sure each of you as directors of your respective areas are trying to keep track, but are you getting the numbers of when new businesses are coming in? Are you hearing it's harder with a business close. Somebody might not announce it, although some do choose to announce when they're closing, but do you get to keep track of that? Do you have a relationship with the Mint to be able to keep track of those numbers?
Yeah, there are two ways around that, one of which is through Urban Economy. We receive a monthly list, which is generated through business licensing. There are some that provides new, renewed, or canceled. I would say that all of my colleagues and myself, we are on the ground, so we're very aware of when a new business is moving in.
Perfect.
If a development permit has been issued, or maybe we need to have a conversation with the business. But between business licensing and assessment, we are working through some issues around that. And certainly Charles Gordon and his team have been very helpful. And certainly it's a work in progress.
Thank you. I'm going to be out of time. I will come back for a second round, and I'll just give our downtown BIA folks a heads up that I'll have a question when I come back around, just as I know there's been some recent discussion publicly, and I want to get a sense of the numbers that you're aware of, because I think it's important to tell the whole story about what's happening going on there. So I'll go to Councillor Stevenson.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks to everyone for being here, and thanks for the Chinatown BIA for staying up there. I just had a few follow-up questions. Actually, maybe I'll just go first to the clerks. As mentioned, there was sort of a supplementary document that was provided from the auditor. Just wondering if that can be appended to the meeting records.
Yeah, it was distributed to you, and you can make a motion to add it to the meeting file. That's absolutely in order.
Okay, I'll maybe look to my colleagues on committee to do that. Just I think it is important to have that full picture and a full record of that. I also just wanted to touch base with admin as well, just to confirm. I think, I had heard some questions in the community about how the PIA had spent some city funding, the Chinatown Vibrancy grants. Just wanted to confirm that city administration did a thorough review of that and didn't identify any irregularities.
That's correct.
Okay, great. I think that's important to have out there and have clarity around that. again, I think some of the questions that have been coming my way, and I think are important in the context of this audit. One thing I wanted to talk to you about was it's in the note 5, the related party accounts and transactions. So I just note in this audit report that there was a pretty significant jump between 2024 and 2025, going from about $2,600 in related party transactions to over 10,000. You know, the related party accounts aren't noted in any of the other audits, so for me it is important to ask a question around that and just understand what internal controls are being put into place or policies.
Yeah, I can provide some answers to that. So I guess part of this kind of stems from 2024 again, right? So in 2023, there was $10,972 in related party transactions. So just to kind of clarify, with regards to related party transactions, the related party transactions revolve primarily around individuals on the board that we're utilizing services for. These are primarily food services. So with all our events, the intention that we're trying to drive is keep the money within Chinatown. We're utilizing all services within Chinatown with the grant funding. As you are aware, or some of you may or may not be aware, we're losing more and more restaurants. So the ability to we'll probably end up having more related party transactions because some of these are fairly long-standing businesses, and unfortunately, these are some of the battles that we're coming up against in order to try to continue to use services. Programs before, like Open for Business programs, helped us open more businesses. We had a few restaurants and food service. Those programs really helped us. I would love to see more of those programs that can help us. We would love to have
yeah, and
more
I'm so
businesses.
sorry. Yeah, just mindful of my time.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, I can understand some of the constraints. I think something that I think our city staff identified, and that I think I heard in the community, was maybe some gaps in best practice with the sort of the regulations and bylaws that you have for the BIA. So just in terms of, you know, multiple board members from a single business on the board, interpersonal relationships on the board. Just wanted to confirm that you are preparing some amendments to those bylaws for your AGM.
Yeah, we do have, we are working on an internal governance document. We do have controls around conflict of interest. Regarding segregation of duties, in the past, we've really only had 2 signing authorities. We now have 4. We've not adopted to have 4, but our chair is now acting ED, so now we have 3. Right, so we're trying to drive improvements from those perspectives, yes.
Okay. Oh, I'll come back. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Tang.
Sorry, I just want to circle back to the thread of questions from Councillor Salvador. I guess number one, just on the grant timelines, and I think I heard you say, Ms. Laliberty, that you'll take it away, but I think I'm just wondering, like, what would that look like? I've also received some emails, not just from businesses, but from nonprofits around the timing of grants. It's quite delayed. It's affecting operation and execution of those projects. So whatever you do, I guess I'm just wondering, how is that going to translate to the nonprofits that also actually fall within the BIA zones?
Councillor Tang, we can speak to some of the grants specifically related to BIAs. So there are a few grant streams available through Capital City Cleanup, and those are possibly the ones where we can look at the timing of when they're made available and when decisions are made. That's something that my colleague Alyssa has committed to follow up on. We also have the Storefront Improvement Program. That's a grant directly to property owners or businesses within BIAs. We haven't heard any issues related to timing of that. That's an ongoing program with several intakes throughout the year. So if there are other specific programs that are potentially causing grief, we would be happy to look into that further. But with respect to the BIA topic this morning, I'm not aware of others that are causing that sort of issue.
Okay, well, and I think I'm maybe happy to send your way offline. I'll just flag it's a very similar issues identified by, BIAs, but in another case, it was through a non-for-profit, so separate departments, but very similar issues. And I would just encourage the departments to communicate and sort that out. And then just on the vacant and derelict commercial sites, I think Can administration just outline, I think there's a couple of motions that's been made for reports coming back later this year. I know this is something we've been circling around how to tackle derelict commercial sites. I know we have a resolution going to Alberta Municipalities Convention this fall to the provincial government to make some allowance for us, anyways, for some changes there. But I feel like no matter what we do, it won't come back to the BIA levy itself, but more it's an issue of general tax revenue. So I guess I'm just wondering if administration can provide an update on where that work is at I know there's a couple of motions coming forward.
So
or reports coming forward.
Councillor Tang, it looks like the vacant non-residential tax subclass options is looking forward to coming back in Q1 2027. So that's the plan currently. In terms of what Mr. Plamondon was talking about in looking at chronically vacant properties being classified as a business so that they could be levied. That's work we haven't done before, so that would be something we need to take away and look at the feasibility. And I suspect there's going to be tax implications, legal implications, potentially changes to regulations at the provincial level. So that would be a body of work. I'd be looking for a motion should you want to proceed investigating in that way in more detail.
Interesting. Okay, well, if you can help, I think I would like to do that and just get that information all together. I feel like on this topic, we've had disparate actions being done, but I think this will help to consolidate some of that information. So I will look to you for your help with the motion wording.
Councillor Tang, Cam Ashmore here from Legal Services. I might be able to simplify that a little bit. Without legislative change, you would not be able to tax a business that was not operating, i.e. a potential business for the purposes of BIA. So it would require legislative change.
Okay. So potentially an advocacy item then?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. On the next round, I'll ask our team from the Downtown BIA. As they're coming up, I'm going to ask Mr. James a question here, just around what's your engagement with groups like the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce? I know, for example, they're in the process, they have a bit of a budget task force, and they're coming up with recommendations for the municipal budget, the 4-year budget. Is there representation from the BIA Council on their body at all that you're aware of?
No.
No? Okay. Do you talk, I'm just curious because I think, one of the worries I always have is, when you do represent 4,600 members and a lot of them are going to be smaller businesses which often don't always feel like have the same capacity to go and be involved. Do they reach out? Have you tried reaching out? Is there a relationship that exists, or is there one that needs to develop to make sure that we're hearing from the wide diversity of businesses that exist across the city?
Yes, I mean, BIA Council certainly represents more businesses than the Chamber. Often those smaller businesses find membership in the Chamber too high. And in the past, we have worked with the Chamber on some specific projects. I think when there are opportunities to collaborate, we attempt.
Okay, that's good to know. I appreciate that. Will the BIA Council then be working on their own budget sort of feedback and submission just to make sure that we're hearing from as many different people in that space as possible?
I think we will be appearing in various opportunities with council. There's on your motion in September 23rd, I believe. Then we will also be coming back with boards and budgets in probably December this year. We will also have some input into the next budget cycle. Around identifying some things. Certainly, we're also always really open to talking to individual or collective councillors, and the mayor's office has been quite open to meeting with us as well.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I'll of course flag as for anyone the budget public hearings that will come up later in November. I think it'd be important to have the BIA Council and maybe individual BIAs represented during those public hearings. So. Thank you. Just a question for our friends here from the Downtown BIA. Wanted to just get a sense of, I know there's been a lot of conversation and real impact. We've lost some great businesses. And I know it's not just in the downtown. There's been other BIAs that have lost businesses, have been impacted. From what I understand, in the downtown specifically, since January 1st, there's been about, I think, around 149 new business licenses issued. Does that align with your knowledge as well? Like, I mean, I just want to get a sense of your feeling of the state of where things are at. I think there's been some real impacts on construction that have to be dealt with, and we're not going to gloss over that. But I just want to get a sense from you, from the BIA, the Downtown BIA, about that work that's been happening.
Yeah, with pleasure, Mayor Knack. And thank you for being out there in our business community, doing walkabouts, meeting with our business members, likewise, Councillor Stevenson. We have lost 23 food service restaurants this year. Granted, we have not completed the year to know what might go into some of those spaces in time. But I just want to express how difficult it has been, as you appreciate. These are the livelihoods of local investors, the livelihoods of their employees. It's part of our downtown ecosystem. And we are hearing about think about BIAs as the push and pull factor, what brings people into our BIAs in downtown, what pushes them out. And it's certainly on the construction side and also the safety side that is the push factor that is taking away from people visiting. And so hence working with administration, working with council, we have very specific requests on construction and on safety that we're advocating for.
Okay, great. And I guess it's very specific to you. I know we've talked about sort of the BIA Council as a whole has some access to some numbers. We're only just got, I think we had, so actually maybe I'll go to administration. I think there has been some information being able to put together about how many, am I correct around that 149 number? Does that sound accurate? Can you tell me about, I'm going to be out of time, so I'm going to come back and just ask for a bit of a state of where things are at, specifically in the downtown. So. But I'll go to Councillor Stevenson first, and go ahead.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just wanted to follow up with administration around the questions of some of the government's bylaws for the Chinatown BIA. So I think there's aspects around those best practices, including multiple board members from the same business, interpersonal relationships, needing to own a business in the geographic area. I believe that those are provisions that do exist in other BIAs. As a city, we can't require what goes in. But am I correct in understanding that administration is working with the Chinatown BIA to suggest amendments and sort of come into line with those best practices?
Absolutely, here to suggest those documents be put in place, and also here to support. So the board ultimately, like you said, Councillor Stevenson, are the ones to enact and move forward on those things, but we are here as in a supportive role to help how we can.
Great. And is that an update and information that we'll have available to us at the time of budget approval?
We may turn to board members to answer that specific to the timing. We know that that's a work in progress. So I should also clarify that we are here clearly to support, but not to advise. Independent legal counsel is something that we would recommend to any organization setting up internal practices and controls. And so the Chinatown BIA is very much welcome to our experience and what we see as best practices, but we do not necessarily dictate how that's implemented.
Yeah, that's helpful. And again, that is, okay, well, yeah, well, maybe I will just ask the board members to come back up if they don't mind, just so I can get clarity on that.
Yeah, we'll swap. Don't go too far, Mr. Robbins. But when I come back, I'll have questions for you, but we'll bring up the Chinatown BIA folks.
And then just as those folks are coming back up, I'll just stay with administration for a moment. So I've heard concerns about so I'm hearing that there's a monthly update of new businesses, and that's sort of the business licensing information that's coming through, or development permits or building permits. I've heard that there seem to be some challenges with those lists matching up with the actual assessment data, and that can cause challenges because there may be businesses that aren't being levied their BIA levy. So just wondering what work is happening internally to improve the data sharing between business licensing, the BIAs, and our assessment teams.
Yeah, that's something that we're actively looking at. I'm going to turn to our colleague Charles Gordon, who's online.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. We are actively working with assessment and taxation and business licensing and the BIAs to develop a sort of a quarterly review process. In fact, we launched this last year. So some of those changes, some of those improvements are happening now. So it will take some time to update the data as things happen, but and then also in conforming with that quarterly update process, we'll see improvement over time. But again, we are proposing some other opportunities for improvement and open to working with and collaborating with the BIAs on that work as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That's really good to hear, and I think is a really important piece of work. Okay, thank you for coming back. Just wanted to again sort of dig into some of the work that that you're doing around the bylaws, some of the board governance questions. So just wanted to confirm. I think I heard earlier that work is underway.
Yeah, we are engaging. We've asked other BIAs, for some of their best practices. We are starting to engage separate legal to help us draft up some internal bylaws.
Great. And would you have that in place by the time the BIA budget is coming back for approval?
We are in the early phases. Our intention is that is one of our priorities.
Yeah.
We are working on.
Great. Well, thank you. I think that would be really important information and context, and I think something, an update I think we'd be looking for at that budget approval time. So thank you for that. I'm so sorry. I think I'll have to come back for another quick round, but thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, I also have no problem. So you'll have more questions for this group here? No. Okay. So you're welcome to grab a seat again. Thank you, and I'll bring up Mr. Robinson. Sorry. And so as Mr. Robinson's coming up, just going to administration, I know we are trying to get a better sense of what's been happening, and it is tough because, obviously we don't want to solely boil it down to numbers. I think that's not an ideal place, but I also think it's good to sort of make sure I have a sense of the whole picture of what's been happening. And so specifically on the downtown, do you have a sense of what's been happening since January 1st? Can you share?
Sure. So since our best data source for downtown businesses and what's happening currently is our business license data. So since January 1st to today, we've issued 110 new business licenses in downtown. The next body of data, which will give us a more bird's eye view of what's happened, is the business census. So enumeration for the 2026 data is just coming to a closure at the end of summer, and we should have results following, which we'll share immediately.
And when we talk about business licenses, that can include a transfer of a license from one person to another, correct?
Yes, it includes, so what the business license data shows is only commercial locations. So home-based businesses, short-term rental licenses are not included. And then in some cases, a change in ownership will require a new business license. So the 110 may capture some of those instances as well.
Okay, that's helpful. So yeah, and that's not necessarily a good or bad thing. That can be good. I know one of the businesses I met when I was door knocking, somebody had to buy a business on 102nd Ave just by 106th Street because the previous owner was going through some, I think, health challenges, and they saw it as a great opportunity to take over an established business. So that was over at the TDS Cafe. So that would be counted as a new business license, but they bought the business from the existing owners.
That's correct.
Perfect. Okay, that's good to know. And I guess, yeah, I want to just go to you, Mr. Robinson, is to get a sense of like, how are you feeling overall? Like, I mean, the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of attention, and rightfully so, I think, on those 23 spaces that have closed. And you know, I don't want to look at it simply of like, well, there's 110 new. That's a net positive. That's a oversimplification of it. So I want to get a sense from you of your engagement with the city staff, your engagement with businesses, how folks are feeling, what they're seeing that's going well, what they're seeing that's not going well. I mean, we had a great news story yesterday about City Center Mall and what that can do for the downtown. But can you just give me a sense of the lay of the land for you? And just hit that microphone there, sorry, thank you.
Thank you for asking, Marinak and City Council. It has been a very difficult couple weeks, actually, with just so many high-profile closures. Again, these are people's livelihoods, of families, of their employees, and so that's really tough. They cite construction, they cite downtown safety as concerns for pushing people away. So, you know, we can be fixated on those as concerns, but I'm really keen to really focus on what we can truly do to improve downtown safety, improve construction mitigation. So that's where we've been putting our effort, and you know, a lot of it's behind the scenes in particular. And so our request for administration is on the construction front to really accelerate the openings of the intersections along 102nd Avenue downtown. We saw how it worked really well for 104th Street. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of work happening at each intersection, and it's not really apparent as to which intersection will open next. So what we're saying is, you know, success to us would look like the opening of a different intersection each month. Get in and get out and get the part of the road network and the cycling network and pedestrian network as well. So get things back online. So the other thing is we're asking administration to review the timeline of some other upcoming projects. For example, the 101 Street transit priority measures, the Chinatown Gate. Those projects will further compound what's already happening. We reached a breaking point already. So, you know, to have 101 Street and 97th Street offline too is just, you know, becomes unbearable for the movement of goods and services and people, kind of thing. So
on that, are you sitting down with administration to review that to see if there's some opportunities to make some shifts?
We are, and so
okay.
they've acknowledged the request. It looks like the 101 Street acceleration is still happening. That is a concern to our business communities because although it is time for a week, that's still impact when we're overwhelmed already. And then finally,
I am out of time, so I might come back around. No, don't apologize. I'm the one that's going to manage my own time. But I can come back around to give you a chance to finish the response there. I will go to Councillor Parmar.
Actually, I'll let you carry the response because I have a question to administration about that 101 Street. Go ahead.
Just hit that microphone button again there, sorry.
I just want to complete the thought on construction mitigation. And so the other request is the framework for being able to assess business impact from construction projects. Really grateful for your motion, supported by Councillor Stevenson, supported by Council overall, for coming back, I think it's November or October, with a business-friendly construction policy. That is really key. We have a lot of lessons to be learned. Won't get into all the lessons yet, but that's an opportunity to really thoughtfully sequence construction coming up and be business considerate in doing so.
Thank you for that. Yeah, we understand that Edmonton has 2 seasons, winter and construction, and we've seen an incredible amount of construction, and so businesses have definitely been impacted by that, and so looking forward to that report coming back from the motion from Councillor Stevenson. I wanted to ask to administration about the 101 Street. Are you aware of the concern that is happening around moving people, just as Speaker Robinson had talked about?
Absolutely. This is Sarah Nichols here with infrastructure, and I know we were meeting recently with James and his team, and we were out even walking that street again this morning. And so what we're doing, I think there's 2 parts: mitigating the construction impacts, and so I think we have a strong plan on the construction impacts because they're all happening overnight on weeknights. And so they'll be between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. So the construction itself is fairly minor. It's generally painting. And so we are managing the construction impacts through very low volumes. I know that there are also concerns about the design of the priority measures. And so that work has been modeled to make sure that traffic isn't congested, is moving. We've been looking at how to advance things, but the other piece around the traffic is really making sure that we're timing this too with a back to school timeline, and really making sure that we're being as efficient for our vehicle traffic and for our transit traffic. That's one of the busiest corridors for our transit network. And so we really want to make sure that vehicle traffic keeps moving and our buses keep moving, and they're not kind of weaving in and out, getting in each other's way. And so lots of work has been happening, and I think the construction impact should be minimal.
I appreciate that, Ms. Nichols. Are you able to also, how do we be proactive with that messaging around impacts? And is there a way, is there a model visual that we can actually share with businesses of how we've modeled what the traffic looks like, where the congestions will be, if there is a 5-minute, 10-minute? I think people are okay with the 5 to 10 minute. I think people are not okay with the 10-minute that becomes 40 minutes. And so I'm just wondering how do we share that information that your team is working through?
Councillor Parmer, I think we've been also working on that. So how do we share it differently and in a usable format? So some of the data and modeling we have is very dense. And so how do we kind of share the information that's relevant in a community-centric way? And so we are looking at kind of having some updates and about not only in this project, I think the impacts are more of the finished construction than the actual construction activity itself. But we really don't want to surprise folks with with where to go, and we want to make sure that we show that we care about all kinds of movement in our city. And I think there is some feelings that we don't like cars, and that's absolutely not true. And so we want to make sure that we're demonstrating that. So you should see some communications material starting to come out, particularly around that. And James, our work and working with our downtown integration manager, will be sharing that through with your business association.
Yeah, it's great. The more that we can get that true information out, the easier it is to have conversations with misinformation being able to be spread so quickly. And so it's great to have that proactive communication. Thank you. I'm going to run out of time as well, so I'll come back for a second round.
Thank you very much. Well, technically, since you're on the second round, you get to go ahead because we've already had multiple rounds.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor Knack. I have a question, Speaker Todd Janes, just to ask about satisfaction levels of the businesses, of the 4,600 businesses that all of the BIAs. Can you maybe walk me through how sad, with all businesses, nobody's going to have the exact same opinion. And so there's always going to be discourse, similar to on council and at committee here. Do you have a way of maybe a best practice of understanding satisfaction levels of each of the BIAs?
When you ask about each of the BIAs, do you mean the businesses within those BIAs?
That's correct, sir, yes.
I'd love to find out what you do for constituents. You know, I think we are on the ground a lot with my staff. We're all required to be visiting, walking the streets, doing that. I think it's mixed. I think it really depends on the issues that are most critical to them. Certainly, I would say there is deep concern about social disorder. I think the support of the Enhanced Services Grant and the Litter Reduction Grant are deeply beneficial to BIAs in terms of directly tackling those issues. I think in terms of licensing, and there is work being done on that. I think Business Friendly Edmonton does a lot of really good things. Often we encounter businesses that are struggling when they're in crisis, much like you as a councillor, probably your constituents call
Correct.
when they hit something. So I'm not sure, are you looking for, like, on a scale, what is the grade that they would give council?
I'm just wondering if it's something that you actually have looked at before, or how, because it's the same thing. Like, I have the same challenge with engagement, similar, and just trying to understand how to make the majority happy and moving forward. I think I will say that going through the reports, it's amazing what the BIAs do. I am actually very jealous that I do not have a BIA in Ward CP Weeniwalk.
Well, we could adopt you at any day if you wish.
Well, I appreciate that. It's incredible to see the work, and so I just want to absolutely recognize that and recognize all the work of all the BIAs, and including yourself as council and bringing everybody together. But just a kind of a thought, and it's not an answer, but maybe like an understanding the satisfaction, because I think we at City Hall will hear about all of the negatives, and it would be just so nice to be able to actually talk about the positives. And so
yeah, I mean, I think quickly, with COVID, it afforded a lot of businesses to hunker down. And businesses are successful when they're exuberant and they're ebullient, and they're out there with their communities. So there is a paradigm shift happening. I think people are getting out more. I think they're engaging more. So that's why it's crucial that we are not only business friendly, but we are vibrancy activators. So that includes better lighting, maintenance of infrastructure, all of those things.
All of those things, and I think you're right.
All of those things that cost lots of money.
Yeah, and I think that it's true. You mentioned at the beginning that you're place managers and community developers, right? And so, like, how do we actually support you as a entity who is activating all of those areas as well, like for Edmontonians? So that's just something for me to think about. To administration, I'm wondering, in the report, it talked about, what the BIA's report is, but is there an opportunity for, in the next iteration of administration's report, to actually talk about how those businesses are doing from the data that we see? And like, that would be very helpful to council, is not only seeing the BIA reports, but actually seeing like how many businesses there are, how it's grown. Like, is it possible to do that in a report or in a memo next time?
So we've got a body of work, Councillor Parmar, that is on the radar screen coming up in 2026, and we are doing a BIA market study, so it'll be based on our business census, and so doing exactly what you're talking about at a BIA by BIA level.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tang.
So I think I'm just on the board. I want to move that the letter dated August 7th, 2026 from the external auditor for the Chinatown Area Business Association be added as attachment 14 of the August 12th, 2026 Urban Planning and Economy Report UPE 03258.
Thank you very much. Do you have any introductory comments?
I think this is just as per the earlier thread, just to, as the addendum came in a few days ago, didn't have a chance to include it as a package today, and just in the spirit of transparency, just wanted to include it as a package. I was contemplating earlier in my Q&A about a separate motion related to advocacy, but I think the answer from legal was pretty compelling that right now we're a bit stuck on this question around levy to property owners versus business owners, and I think there's a lot of legislative hurdles there for it to be successful. So I will drop that and then instead put this on the table. That's all.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Stevenson with questions?
Yeah, thank you. Just a few questions, and then would love to speak to the motion. So I do have a question for the 124th Street BIA, but as you're coming up, I'll just ask Mr. James just about. You've alluded a few times to the ways that the council can support the BIAs, some of the funding that we have in place that's helpful. Just recognizing that our 4-year budget is coming up, I was wondering when the BIA council is planning to provide sort of an ask or a letter to council about what you'd like to see in the budget.
As I mentioned to Councillor Knack, once September 23rd, I think, is the next date when a report will be presented on former Councillor, now Mayor Knack's motion regarding streamlining or supports of BIAs. We will have responses to that as well, and we are working on a budget response too, or a budget partnership ask.
Okay, great. So that will be in September. Again, the sooner we can see that, as soon as our administration can see that, I think the better to get wrapped into our budget. Thank you. Yes, thanks very much for joining us. I had a question. I didn't see it in your report, but I was curious because it's a topic that comes up quite a bit. I understand the 124th Street BIA committed some budget to be able to offer free parking to patrons during Christmas. Could you maybe share a little bit about your experience, how that went? I would just love to know a bit more.
For sure. The administration had reported to us in the fall of 2025 about the usage rates of e-parking in the 124th Street area BIA, and we saw that the annual rate was 29% usage of the parking in the area. So we'd gone to administration and said, okay, we'll just pay you 29% of what parking is for the whole area, and we would like to have all of December free for anybody that wants to come. And we were told no, that wasn't possible. So we said, okay, we'll consider paying 100% usage of the parking. We were also denied that, and so then we pushed back, and then what they came up was that we can use a code to give to people to use for free parking, and so we said, okay, then let's do it for just all the weekends. So there was, I think, 4 weekends in that December, and then as soon as we launched it, UpCore came and did a big construction project in the area, and so a majority of the parking that we had hoped would be used and free was no longer accessible because there was construction in the area. So in the end, we didn't really have a really big usage of the code, because that's also when Hotspot first came and people weren't really keen to use it. So I think we had like 8 or 9 people use it the whole December.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's helpful to know, and I think certainly happy to follow up offline. Just thinking about, so maybe not an ideal scenario in terms of some of the other concurrent things happening, but that's interesting to know that the city was able to come up with that code opportunity.
For sure. Okay. I think ideally we'd love to just pay whatever the rates was usage and just say free parking for anybody that came to the area. And I think especially this year being really hard in the 124th Street area with so many constructions and accessibility issues, for us to be able to provide that, I know would be really much appreciated by the businesses as well as local Edmontonians looking to support local.
Great. Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
That's all my questions.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else on the board for questions, so now we can speak to this motion, and recognizing we have another report coming on September 23rd where there's going to be further discussion on more specific things. So I would generally ask us to try to stay to speaking to the actual motion on the floor versus a broader talk all about BIA. BIAs are wonderful. We all love you. But this motion is about specifically one piece here, so we'll try to generally keep it in line on this. But Councillor Stevenson?
Thank you. I will do my best, but I do want to thank the Chinatown BIA for coming today. I know you're in a bit of a hot seat, and I hope that you heard from us some of the expectations that are in place. But also want to recognize the work that you are doing to address these issues. And I also don't want this one issue to overshadow, the excellent work that we're seeing in Chinatown overall. There have been some really excellent, what I've really noticed, or some things that have really stood out to me, is the great work that's happening to connect with surrounding residential communities, really bridging those gaps, and some wonderful advocacy wins with the province as well. So just want to acknowledge and thank you for your ongoing work. I just, again, forgive me, I'll take 30 seconds, but I do just want to acknowledge many of the other BIAs I didn't have questions for, but think are doing phenomenal work in my ward, and I know that happens beyond. So Alberta Avenue, just think it's really fascinating. You've been able to diversify your revenue. I think it's a great model and something that's been really wonderful to watch. 124th Street in downtown, just huge kudos, incredible work on activation and collaboration. Previously known as North Edge, exciting to see the rebrand and look forward to connecting more about that. Kingsway, BIA, continue to see such great member engagement and business development there. I also want to thank our administration. Really pleased that you're going to be taking on some improvements to the timing of grant disbursements, that better data alignment. It's wonderful that work is already underway. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll just very quickly click on. So again, recognizing we've got a report coming September 23rd, so we can talk more holistically about other things that are going to happen across all BIAs. I'll just focus my comments just on the motion and sort of the specific piece here. So really just want to say thanks to the folks from Chinatown to acknowledging that there were some gaps, and I know there's new representation, new folks in these roles that are working to make the change. I think I've sort of already said it in my questions, but I think I should just say it out loud to be 100% clear that the things that have been identified around addressing the audit, I think a number of Councillor Stevenson's questions about the governance updates, which I'm very excited to hear about, very much would expect that to be completed as part of the next budget approval, because I think it would be very hard, and I will only speak for myself, not the rest of council, but I think it would be challenging for us for me, to want to approve the next budget without seeing resolution to that. So just want to keep that flag. Again, the great news is I heard a desire from the folks that they want to have it resolved as well, but I just wanted to say that out loud as part of this work. It's important work and great to see it being actioned on both the audit side and on some of the governance pieces around the bylaws. So that's it for me. Councillor Tang to close.
Great, thank you. I just on this particular motion, I think the letter does acknowledge that some of the issues that need to be worked through started not recently, but even just from last year when we were around this table with Chinatown BIA, and I think that's just important for you to have the sufficient time to finish that work. And I think this attachment just kind of completes that bigger picture. So happy to include that. And while the mayor discourages us speak to the other elements of the discussion today, I do want to take a moment to just thank everyone who came forward. and I think some of you have some very concrete suggestions that that is thoughtful and that captures just some tangible, practical day-to-day issues that you're facing while we're not able to directly action that, for example, on the tax levy side, just please know that there is a lot of work around derelict and vacant commercial sites. They're in kind of different pieces, whether it's advocacy to the provincial government, whether it's looking at, tax subclass, that there is different pieces that we're working on because it is something that's very top of mind for us. And then, finally, I also want to acknowledge that, for many of us who don't have BIAs in our area, I've appreciated the opportunity to connect with many of you on separate occasions with individual BIAs, and I will just continue to encourage you to speak with that collective voice for all 4,600 businesses that you represent. And I think you've been doing an excellent job. And I look forward to getting out to some individual BIAs to visit with your members. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Please vote.
Just waiting for you,
Yes.
Councillor Sugg. Thank you. We have all the votes.
Thank you. Please display the vote. That is carried 5-0. Wonderful. So that item is complete. Thanks to all of our representatives from all the BIAs. And as mentioned, even if you weren't asked questions, note that means you had some excellent reports. Council and committee reads through all of those agendas in full. And so I know we took the time to go through. And as mentioned, we're going to have another chat with representatives from all the BIAs on September 23rd, and very much looking forward to that. So that brings us to our last item of business, which is item 7.2, which is Council Policy C607B. We're going to bring up the delegation. All right. So we'll get everyone settled in. I didn't see a presentation in eScribe, but I'm guessing there's some opening remarks.
Just some opening remarks.
Perfect. Then we can introduce the entire panel just for folks following along online and also in the room here once you are settled in.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor Knack, and good morning, I suppose, still morning, members of council who are joining us today. My name is Anton Sabo, the Director of Taxation Policy and Programs. Joining me today, Stephen LaRue, the Acting Branch Manager of Assessment and Taxation, and Greg Hutchinson, the Manager of Programs and Policy. We're here just to discuss the amendments, potential changes to Policy C607. And just for awareness, this is a policy that we review every 4 years, just to ensure council is comfortable with the tax forgiveness policies that they're approving on a regular basis and that are delegated to administration to administer. I'll leave the remaining opening remarks to Greg Hutchinson, who will speak to some of the changes that we're recommending.
Thanks, Anton. Hello, committee. We're here to present a review of Council Policy C607, which articulates Council's policies for retroactive municipal tax relief. So Council has broad authority to cancel, reduce, or defer taxes to any extent it considers appropriate. Under our city charter, Council can delegate these tax relief decisions to administration as long as the total amount of impacted taxes is less than $500,000 per year. This delegated authority must be exercised in accordance with Council policy. Council Policy C607 is intended to serve two purposes. It directs administration when to provide tax relief under this delegated authority, and it's also intended to guide Council in making tax relief decisions that are not delegated to administration, just to ensure consistency. We are recommending significant amendments to two sections of this policy. The first is the section that provides limited tax relief for properties that were assessed as derelict but were demolished or rehabilitated throughout the year. We're recommending to expand this section to non-residential properties in anticipation of a future non-residential derelict tax subclass. The second is a section that provides tax relief for properties that will be exempt but are taxable during a period of construction or significant renovation. We are recommending that this section be amended to disallow forgiveness of any penalties accumulated while the property is taxable, to not provide forgiveness while there are still arrears on the account, we want to encourage property owners to keep their account current instead of assuming that all balances will be forgiven later. We're also recommending that this section be expanded to cover affordable housing properties under construction that are exempt under new provincial legislation. Thank you. We'd be pleased to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. This is selected by Councillor Salvador. Councillor Salvador? You have a motion? Okay, it's going to be subsequent. Okay, so did you, well then let's go with questions first, and then I'll go to you, Councillor Salvador, to move the recommendation. But we'll just start with questions. And I see Councillor Stevenson on the board for questions. Please go ahead.
Great, thank you so much. I just wanted to get some clarification on the implications around not providing the forgiveness during construction if there are arrears. And so I guess I'm just thinking of and you can, like, I'm just trying to think through a scenario of a nonprofit, so let's say affordable housing, just confirming if it's existing as affordable housing, they're redeveloping it, is it exempt during the construction if it was previously exempt as affordable housing? So I'm thinking, I can think of a site at Brentwood, they were affordable housing, they were exempt, they're now redeveloping that site.
Yeah, fair question, Councillor. So just to be clear, there's kind of the rules around the legislation and how we follow the legislation, and then there's the council tax forgiveness policy. So strictly from the legislative perspective, to be qualifying for an exemption, you have to be using it for an exempt purpose.
Right.
So if a property is under construction, it isn't being used for that exempt purpose, and so does not qualify. And that's the case for all sorts of different kinds of exempt properties, and makes some sense as well, because you want to be careful. An organization may purchase a property and say, it's our intention to build here, exempt us now, and then they don't end up using it, they transfer the property. So we generally wait, that this is within the legislation, but that's the logic as well, until they're actually operational. We analyze what is the property is being used for in that moment and provide the exemption. The portion of the policy that we have in place there is then to acknowledge, but council appreciates that there is this period of time when construction took place, and if you were a good actor, you did get yourself fully operational, we want to provide that tax rebate going back historical years. And so that's what that section is there for. What we've been finding is that a lot of property owners are understanding, well, there's going to be a rebate in the future, so I just won't pay now. And that's building up years of liability, years of penalties. And if we don't give them their full exemption because perhaps a part of that property will remain taxable for one reason or the next, then that's a challenge for them. And it's also a liability for us. We're building up these liabilities that then cause challenging conversations here at council. So what we're effectively telling them is, there will be this forgiveness that comes once you're fully exempted and constructed, but pay now while you're under construction, and when you are finished construction, come back and you'll get that rebate. So it's just trying to provide a little bit more certainty for both sides and reduce those risks going forward.
Yeah, and I follow that logic. I worry about cash flow. So again, affordable housing providers aren't necessarily flush with cash, going from not paying property taxes on a property to having to pay property taxes on a property when they're losing all their revenue for that property. Like I guess I just have a bit of concern with that. And again, I hear, I'm not entirely sure the risk that we're mitigating, because we do plan to fully reimburse them. That's our policy, that's our direction. The only thing that's accruing outside of that is penalties, but those penalties are imposed by us. So, yeah, maybe just some thoughts on
I mean, I'd say penalties are something that is budgeted for, and if we expect to collect penalties because it's built into our budget and then we don't because we forgive them subsequently, that does have a financial hit. These are not large, typically, amounts per se. I think our focus often, you'll hear this from me on other parts of this policy as well, is trying to be fair and consistent as well. And we're trying to ensure property owners pay their taxes on time. They may qualify for rebates in a subsequent period, but it shouldn't be assumed. And it can get the nonprofit into trouble too, because if they assume that they're going to get a full exemption and then they don't because a part of their property becomes taxable, and that becomes other challenges. So, and I'd also potentially point out that, you know, when large properties under construction, often these are either, as you say, affordable housing properties, or a lot of religious properties are often kind of having large construction projects. The cost of that construction is significant, and the tax amount relative to the construction costs is not typically a large component of that. So.
But I don't know that they're able, I don't know if they're able to capitalize, like get a mortgage to pay the property taxes, or like construction financing covers the capital cost, but I don't think it covers the operational cost. So that means they have to pull the operation, like that money from another source or another pool. So I didn't prepare a motion around this, but that is something I have a bit of trepidation around. But maybe I'll come back, just understand sort of the extent and yeah, just the magnitude we're talking about maybe.
Thank you. Just checking, Councillor Salvador, do you have questions still? No, you were just going to move the motion. Okay, yeah. Councillor Tang?
I wanted to ask about, because I'm just thinking of some examples that have come up in our inbox and committee. This piece around the compassionate waiver for death or illness. I appreciate the amendment to provide adequate documentation. I think that's really important. But can you just clarify, it's for that 1 year in which death or illness occurred. Is that right?
Yeah, there's often confusion around this part of the policy where property owners may come to us with a very difficult event in their lives or in their families' lives and ask for full tax forgiveness. You know, we've had this experience, please give us tax forgiveness. That particular provision is really limited to penalty forgiveness. It's about a non-payment of taxes during a period of difficulty. And the thinking around this part of the policy has traditionally been not one of necessarily of compassion, we're sorry this took place, please, you know, don't have to pay the penalty, whereas it's more a consideration of during the payment period when we sent you a bill, something happened in your life that understandably distracted you from having to pay your taxes at that point, and so it's understandable that the penalty, that the taxes weren't paid on time. So the penalty forgiveness is more focused on understanding that something took place during that period that caused them to be not focused on the tax payment, and that's the focus of that part of the provision, rather than purely a compassionate forgiveness of taxes.
Okay, and then sorry, and so the question, the timeline question, then we're talking about like the year when the event occurred.
Right, because it's a penalty amount, apologies, Councillor, because it's a penalty amount,
no, go ahead.
It would be applied within that calendar year, right? So what would happen is a tax bill is issued in May, deadline of June 30th. Something took place in that period, May and June, that really caused the property owner to be distracted, family emergency, hospitalization, and the taxes aren't paid, let's say, until end of August because we send that reminder in August. And at that point, then they pay and they say, hey, but I got this penalty in July. Can we get that forgiven? Yes, that would be forgiveness. But if they contact us, say, in this year in 2026, and they claim that they had an illness in 2023 and they want taxes and penalties to be forgiven, we're really past that point of having that conversation.
Yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate 4 years is a long time, but sometimes I think for some individuals, it might take longer than a few months to sort out the estates. Anyways, so I'll leave it there. And then the other example I was thinking about is the Southern Springs one. That was the historic tax forgiveness, but can you just remind me, like, this is the error made within 1 year, within the calendar year?
So the Southern Springs example was actually a few years. This related to effectively some remnant parcels within a condominium complex owned by the original builder. The original builder assumed that they had disposed of all parcels and given them over to the condominium complex. They had not. They still owned some parcels, but that builder had effectively wrapped up that corporation. It no longer really existed. And so as they were transferred...
So it's more than just errors of fact then?
Yeah, it was.
I see, okay.
Yeah, an attempt to move these parcels to the actual condominium complex, and they wouldn't take them on until the taxes were removed because they didn't want to accept that liability.
Okay, because I guess in my mind, I'm like, if that was an errors of fact, why wasn't, and if it falls within the policy, why couldn't administration just can't deal with it without going to council? Anyways, thanks for clarifying that. And then finally, I was just curious about the mention around the ARB City Assessment Review Board. That can you just talk a bit more about the trend? Like, are we seeing more appeals? And due to affordability challenges, people are more unable to pay, and how might that impact the budget for this?
So I'd say there's kind of two parts to that question. One related to just the general ARB trends with assessment complaints, and then specifically related to tax forgiveness, any kind of exemption-specific issues. I wouldn't necessarily say that when it comes to the specifics around tax forgiveness or exemptions, we're seeing necessarily an uptick. We have seen just generally, because of market trends increasing, a bit of a higher increase in assessment complaints this last year, but that we typically put more towards market adjustments and changes on that front. Maybe I'll just quickly pass to Stephen LaRue. He might have some additional comments.
Oh, that's okay. I'm out of time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor Knack. I wanted to ask about when we're looking at tax forgiveness, can you remind me about the financial implications to the provincial education tax?
Excellent question, Councillor Palmer. So from our understanding of the legislation, we have no authority to cancel education taxes. The province is going to levy us the education tax regardless. Council has its own policy around forgiveness, but it's limited to the municipal portion of the tax. And so when a property owner comes to us asking for forgiveness, we're only contemplating municipal forgiveness. Education tax always remains owing.
Right, and so we have $2 billion of $2 billion worth of non-profit use that we are subsidizing. Is that a correct stat? I think in the last tax, you had mentioned like there's $12 billion of buildings that we forgive taxes on for not-for-profits.
Correct. There's approximately about $20 billion worth of assessment that is exempted. Now, a large portion of that is government buildings, municipal properties as well. So a much smaller component that would be nonprofits, but certainly education, post-secondary education, primary, secondary school education, and hospitals are very large components of that as well.
Right, because there's one thing about forgiving. Just let's walk through this. So nonprofit gets a bill. They choose not to pay it. Taxpayers then become on the hook for their provincial taxes when we waive the municipal. Is that actually how it works?
Purely from an exemption perspective, so putting aside the tax forgiveness is then, yes, we incur an expense, and now we have a deficit that we have to cover through subsequent increases. But more generally, when we exempt a property, the size of the pie shrinks. The number of people who are going to contribute towards paying that bill are less, and so the remaining people who are still paying pay more to make up the difference.
Okay, and then just to clarify then, so that not-for-profit still has to pay the provincial tax through us?
No, just to clarify, an exemption applies to both education and municipal tax. The tax forgiveness only applies to the municipal tax.
Right, so when we do the tax forgiveness, we actually lose out because we have to already remit our provincial taxes for that.
So again, and good clarity from Greg, when it's exempt, it's fully exempt and the pie shrinks. Everyone pays a little bit more municipal tax, everyone pays a little bit more education tax of those who remain on the taxpayers. But if they're exempt entities, they're not paying education taxes either. When we're doing tax forgiveness, we're only considering forgiving municipal taxes. We do not pay out education taxes because the province isn't going to rebate us that difference. So we still require the
anybody lose? So they still have to pay the provincial.
In cases of tax forgiveness, when a nonprofit, for example, the examples of construction of a property, it takes 2 years to construct a new affordable housing property. During those years, they're expected to pay municipal and education taxes. Once the property is fully constructed, our policy says the municipal taxes get refunded, the education taxes remain owing, and they have to pay those.
And then, like, most of the time they do pay them, right? Like 100% of the time they do pay them?
Yep.
So there is funding, like they obviously have calculated that they have to pay that amount from a provincial tax, but from a municipal tax base, we forgive it.
Yeah, and I would just say that the implementation of tax forgiveness for affordable housing is also fairly new, right? We haven't actually done affordable housing tax forgiveness for that many years. That really came into play once the legislation changed to make affordable housing exempt. Prior to that, all residential housing construction paid as they were, and they were not exempt from taxes either.
Yeah, we had a grant in place in order to, so that they were able to, like, they didn't pay taxes because the city had implemented a grant.
Yeah, there was a period of time where simply all housing providers, regardless of the kind of housing providers, they always were taxable, they always paid. Legislation, some court decisions came through and legislation was changing, so we had a grant for a couple of years to bridge that difference, to acknowledge the court decision, and once the legislation was in place, the exemption was put in place, so the housing grant is no longer required.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Salvador, did you want to put the motion on the floor? Oh, there might be an amendment. Okay. All right. Councillor Stevenson has questions?
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to dig into this a bit further. So I take your point about wanting to ensure like there could be a risk that, again, if an affordable housing provider isn't paying property tax during their construction, they think that at the end it's going to be zero, but maybe it's not fully zero. So just to Councillor Parmar's questions, so the education tax is never retroactively exempted, even if it meets the COPTR, like the provincial legislation?
Correct. So as in the case in all of exemption provisions under the pure legislation perspective,
Gotcha.
Anything that is, at the end of a taxation year, we don't go to previous taxation years for assessment or taxation purposes. The only way we can reach back in time is through tax forgiveness, and your tax forgiveness is limited to municipal portions.
Okay, that's very helpful. And so I think where I'm, because I hear you sort of like it's this desire to mitigate them falling into arrears, even if it's just for the education tax. But it just sort of seems like a compounding risk that they hold. So maybe just to step back, what is the order of magnitude in terms of the liability that the city is holding? Because I think what's important for me is, like, I appreciate the recommendation. I appreciate thinking about how we mitigate risk for the city. I think that mitigating our risk, my guess is that it's fairly small as an absolute number for us as a corporation. But again, for a nonprofit with limited cash flow, it might be really, really significant. So yeah, do we have a ballpark?
Yeah, so I'd say we typically get, so these are not just purely affordable housing, these are any kind of non-exempt entity. Typically get, on average, in the last 6 years, about 7 applications under this process. Okay. Those average kind of, on an annual basis, what we average in tax forgiveness for those properties is about a little under $200,000 a year.
Okay. And of those 7, how many were in arrears?
Sorry, say that again?
Of the 7 applications that were made, are those all the ones that were in arrears when they applied?
I wouldn't have that breakdown of that information. So 7 is the average over the last 6 years. So the numbers vary from 2 to 20 each individual year.
Okay.
Actually, I had, yeah, that's right. 20 was the high point.
No, that's very helpful. So yeah, I mean, I think again, appreciating the advice, and I think it's a reasonable conclusion to come to. I do just think I think there's some opportunities. I just worry about it going into policy and sort of creating these compounding impacts for nonprofits. So I will leave it to committee's consideration. But I don't have, let me just confirm any further questions. Oh yeah, well then I think there is just a question too about some of the forgiveness that we end up doing through council. The report alludes to there being an opportunity to change policy so that we're seeing fewer sort of council generated forgivenesses. Just wondering if you wanted to share your thoughts. So for example, if we were considering, maybe looking at allowing administration to provide relief for organizations that would have been exempt but just failed in their submissions, in their paperwork, What do you think about that? And what do you think are reasonable timeframes?
So I'm just also looking at your clock and being aware of how much time I have to speak to this. If such an amendment were to be made, then I might have more to say on it.
Sure.
I think I'd just say at a very high level, the focus, and to your point around fiscal impact, there's always going to be a fiscal impact of adding additional forgivenesses. They're typically, from a grand scheme of municipal government, they're not large amounts. From a perspective of our administration, I think our primary focus is often about fairness, equity, and consistency. If we are hearing from property owners on a regular basis, we know what the policies are and we turn away a dozen, and then one happens to go to a council member and requests forgiveness and they get through, that's the issue. So our focus is whatever decisions you make as a council, let's put them into policy so that we can apply them consistently and not have certain property owners who happen to be more vocal get forgiveness. That probably is a primary focus.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Salvador?
Yeah, thanks so much. So just a few moving pieces here, and I think a few potential ways we could move forward. And I should provide some context here too. So one of the things that I've been thinking about and has been raised by a colleague as well is just around tax forgiveness for nonprofit entities that otherwise qualify for an exemption but might have applied outside of the required timelines and maybe missed that deadline. So yeah, I'm looking at potentially moving something around that, but wanted to get a little bit of feedback from administration on what was contemplated there. Is there any thoughts around like an appropriate period of time for what that could look like?
Appreciate that, and I see you have a little bit more time on your clock, so I will expound further. So I'll just maybe quickly provide the high-level context, again, remembering that there's a distinction between tax forgiveness policy and the exemptions and the exemption rules. To be clear, we do not have the authority, just in the world of assessment, so too in the world of exemptions, it's all one grouping of authorities, to go back in time and retroactively exempt properties. Once a year has ended, the assessment is locked in and the exemption amount is locked in. We use a separate power in the MGA for council's tax forgiveness powers where we think appropriate to provide tax forgiveness and to reach back in time. What we do with existing applications for exemptions is if a property owner contacts us, so under the legislation, I'll back up again. Property owners are technically supposed to provide their applications by September 30th of the previous year in order to qualify for the following taxation year. That's the legislation. And that would generally be so that we have certainty around what we're looking at in terms of our taxable base and that they know what's coming up. But that also can leave situations where they're already operating, but they're not able to get that exemption. So administratively, while the legislation says this is the absolute line that must take place, we're more lenient. If we receive an application, say in February of a taxation year, while they've technically missed the deadline, we will process and exempt that property from February onwards for that exemption. So we're generally fairly forgiving when it comes to how we administer our exemption processes. If we now go back, say this property owner contacts us in February or March of 2026, but they tell us that they've been operating since September of previous year under legislation, again, we don't have the authority to go back. How to address that period of time? So there's different arguments there. I'd say on the one hand, again, we want to be careful around adding provisions to provide tax forgiveness there because we are weakening our own deadlines, and we're saying, the deadline to submit to us doesn't really matter. You can submit whenever you want, and when you finally submit, we'll go back in time and forgive everything. So I think the deadline conversation is always an important conversation there. And obviously there's going to be some financial impact, some liability associated with going back on time. On the other hand, I'm cognizant that when these challenges come to council, you find it very difficult to say no. And importantly, when we're writing these policies is our consideration of what would council do in these circumstances, right? And so we want a consistent policy. I think it would be easier if you have a policy that you're all agreeing on to stick with it and to try to kind of stay there in that side of things. And again, I think that's where we would go with this, is that fairness and consistency is primary. Just on the specific point there around new applications or renewals, there's also, you asked about timelines. I do see a distinction between new applications of nonprofit organizations and renewals of existing organizations. We've really stepped up our game when it comes to renewing. So nonprofits are those that require to apply to us do need to reapply on every 3 years just to ensure that they're still operating, they're still using the same space, any updates to their lease. So we ask for renewal paperwork. For those properties, we've really tried to improve our communication, and we send 3 letters to those organizations now in the last few years, and we follow up with phone calls in the calendar year where they have to renew. So if after 3 letters and phone calls they still fail to renew and they contact us then the following year when, say, for example, the tax bill is due, I have a harder time with going back to the time that we contacted them originally than I do for a new application who may not have known that they had to apply to get their exemption. So there's a distinction, I think, there between new applications and renewals. And then for timelines, in terms of how many years back, if you were to consider providing forgiveness back to when they were first operating, my timeline often hits to, well, when did they hear from the city? And for most of these nonprofits, they will have heard from us when the tax bill gets sent out in May and June. And if they don't contact us at that time, and they don't contact us when the reminder notice goes out, and they wait for taxes to accumulate over multiple years until we start telling them caveats are on your property, that's now 2 or 3 years down the line, that's, again, concerning for me. So 1 year for new applications I can see. I'm just understanding that they didn't know they had to apply, perhaps. But when they got that bill, that's the time that I'd expect it for them to be reaching out. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you very much. So that was that. Do you have a motion? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to move a referral motion just based on some of the things that have been raised here. Okay, so I'll move that financial services report, 1 second, FS03413 be referred back to administration to delete and replace, there we go. Be referred back to administration to 1, support tax forgiveness for a period of 1 year for nonprofit entities that otherwise qualify for an exemption but applied for the exemption outside the required or legislated timelines for new exemption applications only. And point 2, to delete if the property is in tax arrears and from section 3.1 with a due date of Q4 to executive committee.
Thank you. Do you want to take 2 minutes to introduce?
Yeah, absolutely. So for part 1, I really appreciate the answers that we just received from administration. But the intent of this motion is really to look at how we can embed more predictability and consistency into policy for cases where, again, that procedural deadline may have been missed for nonprofit entities. And the idea here is that if they qualify for an exemption during that period in question, missing a deadline shouldn't necessarily convert an otherwise exempt nonprofit into a taxable entity. So I think this is actually more reflective of what we've been doing in practice anyways around the council table. Council has approved tax forgiveness for various organizations in these contexts, so I think it's really reasonable to look at potential policy amendments to support better alignment with our current practices. Initially, I was kind of going back and forth around the 1 year or 2 year. I think given the answers we just received, 1 year does make sense. And yeah, really appreciate the feedback we've received and appreciate point 2 that Councillor Stevenson has raised as well. I think that was well articulated and happy to advance this. Thanks.
Thank you. So just for me, I wanted to get a sense as there was some, as folks were reading the motion from administration, initial reactions, thoughts that you wanted to share.
Yeah, so part 1 is understood. Just under part 2, want to clarify based off of what I heard in the conversation today and the intention. The way I read that is if a nonprofit comes to us and they become exempt, they've now fully constructed, they're now exempt, and they have outstanding taxes, that says we will not require them to pay those taxes before we issue forgiveness. However, I don't think that says that we would forgive the penalties that accumulated over the time. So I'm not sure if that was the intention of the mover.
And I know we have slight awkwardness about who the mover is. It is committee and we're near, I think we can still finish before lunch, so maybe we'll ask the somewhat mover of that.
Yeah, I mean, I I would not like to have penalties applied, just because I think it becomes a bit redundant. Again, this is, for me, the logic is just if they owe us taxes, sorry, and I know this is not going to align with, but again, they are entitled to a forgiveness for that period. So to penalize them for not paying up front, is a bit, I find that challenging. But I do just for my own understanding, I think what makes it more, what does make it confusing is that they would be in non-forgivable arrears for education tax.
Yeah, so what would happen in a circumstance where property is under construction, taxes would apply. If payments are not received, penalties for the full amount will apply. Yeah. Once then the property becomes exempted, we're either forgiving principal and penalties on the municipal portion, or we're only forgiving principal once that happens. But the penalties will show up on the account until exemption takes place, because if that property doesn't become exempt, we haven't kind of foregone the penalties in advance.
Okay, so then can the nuance be that penalties on the municipal portion would be forgiven?
So, Councillor, and also just looking at the chats between the internals. Yeah, so it has to be about the penalty forgiveness as well, for if that's the intention, and perhaps referring it back to administration just with the general direction might be the best approach to, and we can understand the intent.
And then you can give, so recognizing the time, how can we tweak number 2 to make that a little more general
probably to say, to adjust section 3.1 to continue to allow forgiveness of penalties going forward. Something along those lines is probably sufficient.
I think I heard frantic typing by the clerks who were trying to capture that. Is that considered a friendly amendment for point 2? Okay, not seeing any concern with that. And then just with my last little bit of time, then you'll provide a bit of a further breakdown about, what we're talking about, because I'm still not sure I fully agree with even a modified number 2, but I'm okay with getting the analysis. So you'll give us that detail. I lean to still support what was recommended by administration, but I don't want to hold it off. So you'll provide that detail in the next report back.
Yes.
Okay, then I think I'm okay with that based off the updated wording at least, and recognizing we can still make a final decision as a committee when this comes back. All right, Councillor Palmer?
Thank you, Mayor Knack. Yeah, I don't love this. And I want to understand, we have exceptions for a reason, and the 2 to 20 come to us. I want to ask administration if this were to come forward and be approved, would we actually have more? Because it's already seen as lenient. Like, people will start to break the exception to more exception. That's what I'm concerned about. Like, I am concerned because, as a fairness, if you are a property taxpayer and your bank pays you the day after it's due, we charge you arrears. Like, we are so strict on taxes. Especially considering like the forgiveness that already exists with a lot of these properties, and how we have to run a 1.25 billion person city with very, very limited municipal taxes. So I just want to understand, I understand where this is coming from. I wanted to understand, what do we think the unintended consequences of making the policy more lenient is?
Yeah, so there are 2 parts to this motion. I'd say in that first part, this is absolutely an expansion of our current forgiveness policy, and as I mentioned earlier, really a weakening of our deadlines. So similar to our tax payment deadline, where we say taxes are due by this date, and if property owners say miss that deadline, we apply penalties fairly consistently. Now, if property owners don't file for exemption paperwork, it's okay, we'll get it figured out later on, and so that could result in some slippage in terms of application expectations. it's hard to quantify that because we haven't done that analysis previously, and we can't look back retroactively, something that we haven't been monitoring. On the second one, that is really an attempt to tighten up our existing policy. So we have been forgiving penalties, so we can provide the actual dollar numbers associated with that. Again, that one is more about liability for both the property owner and for us, with expectations of forgiveness when that might not actually take place once construction completes. And so it's about kind of certainty every year that they pay their taxes, and if they don't, they're accumulating a lot of penalties, and there's a danger that either we're going to eat a larger cost and penalties that we expected to receive that we don't, or they will because they don't get the full exemption that they expected. And so it's a bit more of a risk mitigation on that second component.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting because the numbers are going to come back very low. But I think it's more of a policy direction of fairness of whether or not that that's for council to debate. So, okay, thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Questions, Councillor Stevenson? Just to speak. Okay, any other questions? Not seeing any. Councillor Stevenson to speak.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you so much to the indulgence of committee members for whatever reason. Well, I think it's a good thing. I just tend to have a lot of these files cross my desk, and I think it is because we have a lot of really active communities and community members and organizations that are providing phenomenal service to the folks of Edmonton, and just many of them happen to be located in the ward. And I think there are two points that are really important that I want to highlight. None of the nonprofits that I've worked with have ever come to me and said, oh yeah, we just didn't bother filing the paperwork because we heard that we could come to you and get an exemption. We just don't think those deadlines matter all that much. They come to me in utter panic. They are stressed. They feel terrible. They're apologetic. And they want to rectify things. These are genuine errors. These are genuine oversights that I think are not unreasonable to expect from volunteer-driven organizations that often are run by newcomers, folks that are working to navigate a very complex system. So that's just one piece of context I think is really important. I appreciate the concerns around sort of slippery slopes. Again, I don't think any of these folks are acting in bad faith. It's genuine errors. And I think the other piece that's so important is that these are not taxes that we would otherwise collect. These are organizations that are eligible for exemption, that are able to have that relief. And I think, to the point that was made earlier, which I think was really excellent, is that every one that I have brought forward has been approved by council. And for my thinking that given the consistency, given that logic has been followed in each instance, it makes sense to systemize that and ensure that it is equal and fair. I agree that it's not fair that one organization who maybe knows to reach out to me versus another that doesn't, that they receive different treatment at the city. I think having a level playing field for all organizations makes sense. I think too, it's just a way that we as a city can support nonprofits who are doing really great work in our community. And I think ultimately, the actual dollars and the level of impact that we're considering as a city is quite minimal. So I'll leave it there, but appreciate my colleagues for entertaining this motion and to Councillor Salvador for putting it on the floor.
Thank you. Councillor Palmer?
Thank you, Mayor Knack. I appreciate this, and I understand, and I do support it going back because I was committed to, I was intending to support the motion recommended by administration because I think that those were good changes. It's hard because not-for-profits are doing such a great job. One of the things that I struggle with is not-for-profits still have to have capacity, and paying bills and understanding bills is really important. Most non-for-profits are funded with taxpayers' dollars, and so we want to make sure that that the money is going to where it needs to be. I think when you are not providing the service, you know, when you're not providing the service, I understand kind of the thought around that. Like, I understand both sides of this, but just because, you know, this council at one time has approved the tax exemptions, I wouldn't want to leave that for other councils who may not have that same direction moving forward. When I walked into that executive committee, I did not want to forgive any of those taxes for the organizations that had came in. I had changed my mind throughout that meeting, but you know, I'm going to support the referral motion coming just to do some more work on it. I don't know if, I think for me it would be about seeing the options coming forward. I don't know if I would support this, you know, as it's written or intended, but I'm happy for it to go back for some more thought. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tang?
You know, as I think these two are relatively unrelated, I will ask them to be split for voting purpose. You know, I don't disagree that we need to support the nonprofits doing good work in our community more. I just don't think this is the right mechanism for that. I think there's many other ways to remind, train, build capacity for these community groups, particularly when they first apply for society status, so when they apply for grants through the city, when they work with a NRC, for example, if or with some of the community organizations that support these groups as well when they first start up. I am concerned about the path for greater leniency given administration's comments. And I think the leveling the playing field comment earlier, you know, I think administration strives to reach out to all groups that have some of these issues through multiple communication. And many do respond accordingly, and therefore they don't miss those requirements. And if we need to have this conversation, I'm okay with having it in council chamber. Anyways, I'm not inclined to support part one, but I think there's good, compelling reasons for that part two. Anyways, so that's where I am.
Thank you. And we will, yeah, we've had the request to divide, so we can have that and vote on 1 and 2 separately. Councillor Rutherford?
Yeah, property taxes are always challenging to talk about. There's so much to unpack there. I appreciate the report that administration brought forward and the recommendations. I think they were very thoughtful. So my preferred path, not being a member of committee, would have been administration's recommendations. While I can see the benefit of getting more information from this referral motion, I think I'm very concerned and echo some of the concerns brought forward by Councillor Tang about the leniency that this creates and the softening of where our tax system is very structured and very rigid for residents, for example. We don't give this kind of, you know, no matter how nominal the amount is, seniors don't have this. If they miss the date to challenge their assessment or miss the July 1st deadline for payment, they have arrears and they have to pay them, and we don't. So this is, I think, like going down a very, very slippery slope, and I'm very concerned about it. I also think, and I agree with Councillor Parmar, I think I've been quite frustrated with the number of exemptions that have come to the council table on my time on council. Because I do think once it's in front of us, it is absolutely hard to look at those nonprofits providers and say, sorry, you're important and you're valued, but we're not going to forgive that. So as somebody that's supported it reluctantly on many occasions, it doesn't mean I like it. And I prefer much more to have a strong policy that provides that guidance, that mitigates the need for things to come to council, but also doesn't create such fuzzy lines that basically treats nonprofit entities different to the rest of our property tax regime. And I'm worried we're going down that path. So while not on committee, if I was on committee, my strong recommendation would be to just go with the recommendation from administration. That being said, given the conversation, I could support one more than I can support two in the points if they are being split for voting purposes. Given the conversation that happened and what our administration said around sort of that distinguishing between a nonprofit that may not know those deadlines versus one that's a renewal. I think is an important distinguishment. But yeah, that's where I land. So take my perspective as food for thought to committee, and thanks for the conversation today.
Thank you very much. Just very quickly for me so we can finish before lunch. I'll say, yeah, again, I'll hesitantly support them. I'm okay with having a little more of a conversation. I hear some mixed feedback on them, but I'd really like administration's feedback. I think our role needs to be to tighten these up to make it more firm than more loose. So I'm not sure what I would potentially support if this came back, but I also I hear the caution, but I think I'm a little concerned about how much we create a system that isn't sort of well defined. And then I think really it's just on us to not, it's tough because we do get the requests from these groups. I've told a number of folks no, and I didn't make a motion, and I don't like doing that, but I also do that to try to stay firm. And so I think it is just incumbent also on us as council to say, yeah, that might be a really good case, but if it doesn't align with this, we're trying to hold firm, because I know of councillors that have said no to bring forward requests, and I know of councillors that have said yes to bring forward requests. I think it's on us to be firm on this and careful and thoughtful on this. So, but I'll support this motion to get that additional analysis, because it won't affect us making that decision before the next year starts. So, Councillor Salvador to close.
Yeah, thanks. I know we're running up on time here. I'll be brief, but really appreciate the conversation, and I can also see both sides of this one, absolutely. And I think given that sort of divergence and the differences of perspectives, even what we've heard today in this room, I mean, that's one of the reasons I think it's worthwhile to have further conversation, and why I think this refer back does make sense. Yeah, and again, I come back to rooting ourselves in fairness and consistency. And the thing that I get hung up on is that it has been a fairly consistent council practice when these items do come forward to approve them. So that's where that tension comes in, and how can we best align policy with what council's intent and practice has been and is going forward. So yeah, I'll support these, and again appreciate Councillor Stevenson's work in teeing all this up, and would appreciate being able to have further dialogue. Thanks.
Thank you. Please vote on just point 1 first.
Councillor Parmar, are you with us?
I
am. We have your vote. Thank you so much. We've got all the votes.
Thank you. Please display the vote. That is carried 3-2. Please vote on point 2.
We have all the votes.
Thank you. Please display the vote. That is carried 4-1. Perfect. So I'll come back in November. Responses to council inquiries are none. Private reports none. Motions pending none. Any notices of motion or motions of customary notice? Yeah. Councillor Salvador.
So just a notice of motion. At the next regular City Council meeting, I'll move that administration include options and analysis for new offsite levies for facilities and infrastructure in alignment with the Municipal Government Act and the City of Edmonton Charter as part of the analysis of growth funding and delivery tools for facilities and infrastructure in the future growth area, cost and financial options report UPE 02577, and the options and analysis to also implement in the developing area.
Thank you. Any other notices of motion?
One more.
Not
I have
seeing
one
any.
more, Andrew. Sorry.
Sorry?
I have one more.
Oh, sorry, one more. Sorry, go ahead, please.
At the next regular council meeting, I'll move that administration provide a memo to council on the implementation and enforcement of the Centre City Temporary Parking Program, including an update to the current numbers as described in attachment 2 of report UPE 01557, options to address surface parking lots in Centre City and the quarters, identifying the number of Centre City surface parking lots that had a valid development permit before the program, received an approved development permit for Centre City temporary parking through the program, and continue to operate without a valid development permit following June 30th, 2026. 2, for each category, the aggregate site area and aggregate 2026 assessed value of the parcels comprising those lots. 3, an updated map for the Figure Centre City vehicle parking use permit status map in attachment 2 of the report UPE 01557, identifying the lots in each category above. And 4, the number and type of enforcement actions initiated since July 1st, 2026, broken down by enforcement tool, and the number of unique properties affected. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll just flag that that feels like information that should be on hand from administration, so maybe it could be an inquiry, but so I'll accept the notice now, but I would also recommend maybe circulating it to myself and to the clerks as an inquiry. I don't think we've been using that tool as much as we should, and that feels like information administration should have on hand and therefore might not require motion. So, but we'll accept it as a notice.
We'll find out.
Send that email over to the clerks today for the official amount of time needed to submit that as an inquiry. So thank you. Those are all our notices of motion. We are adjourned at 12:01. Thanks, everyone.